The situation in Mexico has continued to worsen in recent hours, following the elimination of El Mencho, the leader of the Jalisco cartel, the new generation cartel, which has triggered an impressive chain reaction throughout the country. And here in the Middle East, the United States keeps moving and positioning its forces in anticipation of the imminent attack against Iran. Greetings, I'm Ari, and we begin with the serious situation currently shaking Mexico. After the terrible and dramatic wave of violence that broke out between the night of Sunday the 22nd and the morning of today, February 23rd, after the elimination of Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho, was confirmed. The operation took place in the Tapalpa area in Jalisco. The Mexican authorities presented it as a high-impact action. And from the United States, it was acknowledged that there was intelligence support, but without direct participation. Simply put, Mexico carried out the operation and the United States helped with information. Well, but why is Mexico like this right now? Why is half the country on fire? Well, after the death of El Mencho, the cartel responded immediately because as soon as the results of the operation were made public, the narco-blockades began. Roads blocked with vehicles, trucks, and cars set on fire, coordinated attacks against security forces, and a sense of chaos. In several places, especially in Jalisco and also in Michoacan, during the intense fighting, the deaths of at least 25 members of the Mexican National Guard have been reported so far at the time of making this video. In addition, dozens of cartel members were reported dead, and there were civilian casualties which, although fewer in comparison, are still absolutely tragic. There is talk of at least a couple of civilians who died in the context of the riots and clashes. That number is expected to rise hour by hour, given the circumstances and the current severity of the situation in the country. The multiple images that began circulating on social media confirmed the announcement by the Mexican authorities, who spoke of a huge number of blockades. During the most critical hours, a figure of around 252 blockades was reported on day 0, and by this morning, it was said that most of them had already been removed. But even when a blockade is cleared, the message has already been sent: the ability to paralyze entire regions for hours. The multiple riots that have broken out have paralyzed daily life in different localities. Coordinated attacks were reported against Banco del Bienestar branches in Jalisco. The numbers vary depending on the final report, but the most repeated range was between 18 and 20 affected branches with damage and fires. In addition, the burning of dozens of convenience stores was reported. News from Acarado, from Unicom News, criminal group attacks banks and businesses. The goal is not just to cause harm for the sake of harm. Updates on the situation. It's a form of terror to say we can set fire wherever and whenever we want. That is how the news is. Social media is obviously filled with multiple videos, a huge amount. Many are real, of course, but there are also old videos from other places, or videos generated with artificial intelligence that are simply made to generate traffic on social media, and they end up causing a lot of panic among the population. So it's worth urging you to double-check what you're seeing on social media, make sure it's confirmed information, look at official figures and consistent reports. Obviously, we know that social media is very useful, at least when official information is very biased, as often happens in different countries. The important thing is not to take any clip you see on social media as real, so double-check carefully. Also, sources posting on Mexican social media have reported that the cartels are throwing grenades inside supermarkets full of people. Multiple disturbances and very specific incidents, some extremely serious, are being reported in various places. But before I dive in, I want to share with you the story of this vial, which amazed me and I think you should know about too. This vial holds an unbelievable story that was unheard until now. Inside is earth from the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, rescued by archaeologists after thousands of years of history were dumped as rubble. It is our opportunity to prevent history from disappearing. Start the new year with a personal connection to Jerusalem. Click the link in bio or scan the code to enjoy a special offer. Heavily escorted, the body of El Mencho arrived in Mexico City, as if it were a procession surrounded by weapons and sirens. For El Mencho's final journey, the city stopped to watch a heavily armed National Guard convoy. The people, those who managed to witness the event and record it. They even saw how a forensic ambulance was escorted as it moved from Mexico City's airport to the Specialized Prosecutor's Office for Organized Crime. This was no ordinary transfer. Inside was the body of the man who, for years, was synonymous with power and violence. El Mencho was wounded in the mountains of Tapalpa. His fate was sealed in the air. He died on the way, and with him, the voice of the most wanted drug lord in Mexico today was silenced. But his downfall did not bring calm to the highways. Vehicles burned. In the cities, businesses were set on fire, and fear spread like smoke that knows no borders. The convoy moved forward like a state funeral procession, guarding not just a body, but the symbol of an era marked by blood and fire. The image was one of fear, and the death of Mexico's most powerful criminal leader was brutal, turned into a security spectacle, a closing ritual, a complete national drama. And the reality is that the death of such a leader does not bring automatic peace. Normally, it brings two possible scenarios. One, that there is a clear successor and the group tries to maintain control with violence, of course, to suppress rivals. And two, that the leadership fractures and internal and excessive fights begin over territories, routes, and businesses. And here we have something key. Even if the state manages to land a huge blow, the immediate risk is a very violent period of readjustment. Strong political accusations also circulated in Mexico around this whole episode, directly against the president of Mexico. And here, as I told you, we have to stay within the realm of what can be verified, because in moments like this, anyone can take advantage of the chaos to push narratives that suit them best. And when that happens, the one who pays the price is the citizen, who just wants to understand what's going on. The big question is whether this will die down tomorrow, if this will end tomorrow, or if this is just beginning. Because if the cartel decides to respond for days, and if there is internal fragmentation, Mexico could be entering a particularly unstable stage in certain regions. So we have to pay close attention to how everything unfolds, in the coming hours, in the coming days, there in Mexico. And I'd like to take this opportunity to send my regards to everyone, to all the Mexicans who watch this channel. Well, now let's move over here to the Middle East. While Mexico is burning, the atmosphere here also feels very tense. And just like someone placing the pawns on the board to start a game. Literally, what we're seeing is preparation that simple. The United States ordered today the departure of non-essential personnel and families from its embassy in Beirut, Lebanon. And know that when a country evacuates non-essential people from an embassy, it doesn't do it just in case. It only does it in the face of a real threat. And at the same time, the travel warning remains at the highest level. U.S. citizens can't travel to Lebanon right now. However, we have to ask ourselves the question, why Beirut in Lebanon? Well, because in the event of a possible U.S. attack on Iran, one of the first elements that will be deployed against the United States, against its assets in the area, and, of course, particularly against Israel, will be the terrorist group Hezbollah from Lebanon. And Hezbollah, like it or not, is Iran's main regional arm right now against Israel. In the last 2 weeks, Israeli attacks in Lebanon, including areas like the Bekaa Valley, have increased significantly as a way of carrying out targeted, preemptive, and preventive attacks before a larger conflict with Iran. Today, a former Israeli intelligence director stated in the Israeli media outlet Maariv that Israel estimates the war with Iran will be a full regional confrontation. Iran will operate its power from Iraq, Yemen, Syria, and also its great and central power. He states that the Israeli army, the IDF, was designed in the reality of a multiple enemies scenario, and he understands that intense confrontation will be necessary for days against Hezbollah in Lebanon. IDF officials also claim that the blow the Israeli army intends to deliver to Hezbollah, if it enters into direct conflict with Israel, It will be such that it will not leave the organization standing. And here there is something clear, and as I have said, we have had 2-3 full weeks of almost daily attacks against very specific targets in Lebanon. But even so, it is understood that we are in a ceasefire between both parties. In the event that there is an open war with Iran and an open war against Hezbollah, let's say there would be no obstacles for the IDF to carry out full attacks against the terrorist organization. All right, and as part of the immense movement of the United States in the region, we have their entrance onto the scene. The USS Gerald Ford, the largest aircraft carrier in the world, which was seen today already in the Mediterranean, passing Suda Bay in Crete, Greece. Tracking reports place it moving at a good pace, a little slower than expected, but ready to position itself off the coast of Israel within the next 24 to 48 hours. Ultimately, regardless of whether it docks at an Israeli port or not, the strategic message is very clear, and it's not just about presence. It's an important power capability of real attack and defense. And of course, the ability to sustain a long campaign against Iran, which gives the United States a very significant advantage in this whole conflict. This aircraft carrier adds to the dozen destroyers already deployed throughout the region to the nearly 200 aircraft that the United States has deployed right now. Here in the Middle East, it is estimated that the United States has 40% of its combat forces positioned right now here in the Middle East. Additionally, today U.S. military transport and refueling planes were documented at Ben Gurion Airport in Israel. Well, and in parallel to all this military deployment, there are the talks and the standoff with Iran. The Iranian regime, through its official spokesperson, said something key. Any attack, even a limited one, will be considered an act of aggression. Period. And that the response, in their words, would be fierce within what they call their right to self-defense. Sources from the Pentagon shared in different media outlets say that President Trump initially gave the order for a limited or targeted attack similar to Operation Magna and Hammer last June, with the hope of pushing Iran to accept their demands in the negotiations. But if a limited attack fails and Iran continues to reject the American conditions, Trump would order a sustained campaign to weaken Iran and erode the regime, instead of a single decisive blow. However, it has been reported in various media outlets that the U.S. Army's own strategic leadership believes that overthrowing the regime through military action is not realistic, and that a strategy of attrition should be considered to bring us to a critical point, whether it's surrender, which is unlikely, or to the point of negotiating a solution similar to Bashar al-Assad's in Syria. Of course, this would also depend on a unique window opening during the war that would allow for the elimination of high-ranking members of the Iranian regime, including the critical leadership. U.S. and Iranian representatives are expected to meet this Thursday in Geneva for potential talks, considered as the last resort to reach an agreement, before Trump orders a direct attack against Iran. And in all this context, Secretary of State Marco Rubio postponed his planned visit to Israel this Saturday to next Monday. So, where do we stand today? Monday, February 23rd, 2026 in Mexico. A gigantic blow to the massive Jalisco cartel, but with a violent reaction that shows their ability to respond and a real risk of criminal reorganization. Mexico is really entering a very serious crisis. And in the Middle East, signs of preparation, signs of evacuation, signs of deterrence, and a rhetoric that makes it clear that no one is going to let a strike go unanswered. The question is, what will happen now? Well, that's the uncertainty we face every day. In these two scenarios, in Mexico and here in the Middle East, there's a pattern that repeats itself. When a big piece moves, the board doesn't stay still. And many times the most dangerous thing isn't the initial blow, but the day after. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell so you know when I upload a new video, and don't leave without giving it a like. See you.